When I was 15, I'd been playing the piano for 7 years, but I still suck. But when I found the right method to practice, I finally stopped wasting time. And this is me 1.5 years later, playing at a wedding. And now I can even play showpieces that I never thought were gonna be possible for me to play. And let me tell you this, playing the piece is really so much better than just listening. And in this video, I'm gonna show you how I would get there all over again, skipping those 7 wasted years. Let's start with the first part of my method. Technique. And I really believe this should be the core of any pianist who's trying to improve. Because think about this. What's currently standing between you and your goal of playing your dream pieces? It's not that you don't have a refined ear or you need better musicality, you need to know more music theory, you need to read faster. Those are all things that are nice to have, but they're not the core bottleneck. Your bottleneck right now, and trust me on this, I'm 100% sure it's technique. You've probably done this before. You printed some sheet music of a piece you really like to listen to, and you convince yourself it's actually not that difficult. It's only a matter of time. And you said, I'm just gonna practice so much, and then I will be able to play the piece. But let me guess, that unfinished sheet music is probably still laying somewhere on your piano. Because you found out the hard way that that doesn't work. Because the best and undisputed way to build technique is to build it gradually. And you don't need to reinvent the wheel for this. There's composers out there who literally spend their entire life studying what builds technique. These are composers like Czerny or Burkmuller. And what they did is they wrote complete books with compositions teaching you everything you need to know about technique at a certain level. And that's the reason piano teachers still use these books to this day. Because they just work so incredibly well. And on top of that, these are actually interesting pieces to play. The issue you have right now, and that a lot of adult piano players have starting later in life, is that you need to cross this sort of gap. The reason for this gap is that currently you're at a level where you can't really play a lot of pieces that you like to listen to, which can cause you to play pieces that aren't really helpful for your improvement because they're too far ahead of your ability. What I would do differently if I was starting today is to cross this gap as quickly as possible. Because now that I'm at this point where I can play pieces that I love to listen to myself, progress is so much easier because it's more motivating. For most people, this is something you can cross within a year. And after that point, you can be so much more free in the pieces you can choose because your ability is so much higher. And I don't want to make this gap sound much more dramatic than it actually is. It's just this part where you're going to focus more on Bach and progressive etudes. Actually, do you know what's the most motivating part for anybody to stick with a hobby? And this isn't just piano, this could be running or going to the gym, it could be anything. The number one driver of motivation is to see progress. And I experienced this firsthand. Once I changed my practice methods and my repertoire to be more effective for progress, my motivation also skyrocketed. So let me tell you about that repertoire first. If I were to guess what you're playing right now, it's probably some piece you believe is at the edge of your ability. But it's probably a piece that's way too difficult because how long ago did you print that sheet music? And other than that, you probably have some other pieces that they're 80-90% finished, but you don't really know what to do to get them to 100%. You listen to professional pianists play and you realize there's such a big difference between your interpretation and theirs. You can't really put your finger on it what's the exact difference. Now, what I would like you to do to cross that gap we talked about earlier is to completely change your repertoire. What we're going to do is pick pieces specifically designed for you to improve and get as much out of them as possible. 2 pieces at a time. One piece that is in a stage of reading and another piece that is going to be in a stage of refining the technical aspects. So what piece specifically should you pick? And this really depends on your skill level or your ability at playing the piano. So what I'm going to do is to divide the classical repertoire in 10 levels of difficulty. So what you have to do is to assign yourself a level of difficulty out of 10 and then subtract 1. After you've got that number, that is now your current skill level. So your goal right now is to get to level 6 as quickly as possible. Because that's sort of the point where the gap starts closing. And you can actually play some pieces that are commonly played in concerts. So here's exactly what you need to do if you're a level 2 pianist. If you're a level 3 pianist, going to level 4, and then finally level 5. I am 100% sure if you just start practicing these pieces with the right methods I will give you, you will progress much faster than you ever thought was possible. And the best way for me to prove it is just to tell you to try it out. You only need a few weeks to see that this really does work. Record yourself today, play some pieces and see how it goes, and then record yourself 3 weeks later after using this method. And I can guarantee to you that it works. and you'll stick to it because you'll never have progressed so quickly before. So the final thing that remains for me to tell you is to how to practice. The first step is to practice finger strength. And you could do this with technique exercises, but if you don't want to be that extreme, you could also just do that with the pieces you're playing. And the second step is to start with the right practice habits. And there's a lot of habits out there that are definitely worth to learn, but it starts with the basics. And the basics you've already probably heard, so why aren't you implementing them yet? And a lot of this you already know. Start hands separate, play your left hand first, play slow, play with metronome. But if you already know this and you're not applying these practice methods, then what are you really doing? And the thing is, you'll notice if you do this mindfully, this is very, very exhausting. To play with your left hand only, for example, at a slow tempo with metronome, to really do this precise and then practice finger strength, takes a lot of mental effort. You'll notice that you just want to sit down and give yourself some time to do nothing because your brain will need some time to recover. And that's going to be your number one indicator that it's working. When I had that aha moment, when I was so exhausted after only playing a little bit of Bach, I realized that this must help me improve so much faster. Before I realized this and changed my entire method, I had times where I was practicing a lot of hours a day, but I didn't really seem to improve. And at the end of my practice session, I also just wasn't that tired. And the reason for that is that I just hadn't practiced as disciplined as hard as I could. So trust me on this. All you need to know is slow practice, metronome practice, hand separate practice. These three, if you actually implement them correctly, are going to get you 80% of the benefits of all of these practice methods that are out there. And if you combine all of this with finger strength, I guarantee you're going to come back to this video in a few weeks and thank me and try to convince others to do this as well.